That's underway based on data. And I've been talking to all our 6 panelists and others as well about how comfortable they feel about this new environment. In a moment, I'm going to ask you a question which will require your app. So please, will you get that out? But I'm going to ask each of the panelists one simple question. At the moment, how much do you feel you and the world is gripping the enormity of the challenge that there is on the data-driven economy? Lubna Olayan.
Definitely overwhelmed.
I think you need to press the...
Sorry? I said definitely overwhelmed by all the big data around us, surrounding us.
Do you feel comfortable?
Trying to, doing our best to, trying to understand it and maximize the use of it.
Joe Kaeser, President and CEO of Siemens, you make your money from data. How much do you think the world is comfortable with the data challenge at the moment?
Well, I believe the jury is still out on that one because most people have not even understood on what that could actually mean for the global society. So that's why this is a very important topic for leadership to address.
Overwhelmed? Do you agree with Lubna on that?
I would say I'm mindful about the challenge we have ahead of us. And it requires a lot of leadership in the world because we have a split society already in the world, and we must not split that any further.
Mohammed Alaba, do you feel comfortable about the amount of data there is out there and how you're coping with it?
I think, Nick, we discussed this a little bit. I'm definitely not comfortable, but I'm quite scared as well because there's so much happening. There's data being created every second of our lives. And I think what's really scary, or what scares me, is that most of the world population do not understand the danger of data and what it's doing to our lives.
All right, that's what we're going to get into. Ajay Banga, CEO of MasterCard, you deal in data. Do you feel comfortable?
I feel comfortable, but I would say that it's very early stages, Nick. I mean, I'm both Indian and American, so I'll use an American analogy and an Indian one. First innings of a baseball game, first over of a 20-over cricket match. That's where data and its comprehension is.
Okay, Tidjane Thiam from Credit Suisse, CEO of Credit Suisse. You deal in data, like everyone on the panel. Are you comfortable?
I think the situation is exciting, but also scary, as Mohammed said. The possibilities are limitless, but the accountability, the ethical questions which come with the availability of that data are enormous.
Thank you. And Tom Kennedy, Chairman and CEO of Raytheon. Again, data is at the heart of your business.
Data is at the heart of our business, but I can tell you we are on an exponential curve.
Just say it again.
The mic's not on? Okay. We are very comfortable with big data, but I can tell you we are on an exponential curve relative to the applications of big data and the use in business. And we're at the very linear part right now, but we're at the apex. And we really believe that big data is really going to take off here in the next 5 years.
Picking up what Mohammed Alaba has just said, do you see a lot of people out there who are scared and overwhelmed?
I see folks don't really understand how to use and utilize big data, but it's appearing in everything that we do across the entire spectrum of our business and the businesses that we support.
Nick, there's so much data coming in. 90% of the data was generated in the last 2 years. And in fact, the real problem is you've got too much data coming in. Prioritizing that data, layering it the right way, analyzing it the right way, and then getting to use it is much harder than people make it out to be. So while it's a fashion today to talk about big data, I think what you really need to do is to bring big data down to bite-sized chunks so you can use it sensibly.
Right. What I want to do is just test the views of the delegates here. If I can ask you to use your app, let's look at the question which we need to put up about the way data is going, the data-driven world, the future of the information economy. There are 6 options for you. And I'd like you to use your app if you can. Go onto your app, look at where it says polling, and give us your view on what is the outlook of the data and information age in your mind. New business models, advancements in healthcare, global internet connectivity, heightened productivity, new ways to learn, uncertainty and disruption. You have one choice only. New business models, 30%. We'll see what you're thinking at the end in about 50 minutes' time. Advancements in healthcare and new ways to learn. Uncertainty and disruption, only 8%. So many of you appear reassured about the prospects, which is good news given what we've just heard from most of the panelists. Let's drill down a little bit further. Lubna Olayan, you are CEO and Deputy Chair of the Olayan Financing Company in Saudi Arabia. What's your view? How are you coping with this within your company at the moment?
Big data is really in its infancy in the Arab world, and actually even in the West. I mean, we haven't really taken advantage of where it is. The predictions that were made 5 years ago about where we will be using data, only 20 to 30% of them has been achieved. But here we, within our company, we're trying to use it to improve efficiency of our operations. We have a lot in our real estate operations. We have a large 1,000 units compound. We're trying to use real data to cut down costs. We produce our own electricity, our own water, and we're trying to predict usage so we can be as efficient as possible in our costing. In the retail side is where we see the use of data is the most, and people are using that for upselling their products, for innovating new products. In our beverage business, that's where one of the utilization is how can we innovate new product lines. So it varies in different sectors within the industries. The potential for big data, as I said earlier, it hasn't been used as much, but the potential is great. And especially for us in the Arab world, I believe we're going to frog leap into the use of data much more than we have done in the past.
Given the nature of Vision 2030 here in the Kingdom, what's your view about the ability of your staff, those working for you, to handle, to grip both the enormity of the challenge, but also the enormity of opportunity here?
There's going to be a need for a lot of training. One of the biggest impediments for big data analytics is the lack of equipped staff in analytical skills. And I think here is the potential for us to really train and work with the governments. And given the demographics of my country, where there's abundance, I mean, 70% of our population is less than 30, there is great potential for us to employ our youth in data analytics and open new areas for them in that area.
Thank you. Joe Kaeser, you spend at Siemens a vast amount of money training people. What are you seeing when it comes to the trends of understanding the enormity of what is happening, the enormity of the challenge, and the urgency?
Well, I believe that as far as the professionals are concerned, they very, very well understand what you can do with data, how you generate data, and how you make business out of it. But I think the really, really compelling topic, talking about data, is not so much technology. Technology has enabled us for a long thing. There's three areas if you talk data. The first one is data and society. So how do we make sure that the law system deals with something which is exterritorial, right? Because legal systems are territorial. The Kingdom has its legal system, Germany has, China has, the United States have. So, but the question is, what do you do with free flow of data, which is borderless? Completely understood and unanswered question. The second topic is data and individuals. Who owns my data? Who owns my photograph I'm posting on Instagram? Is that the public now or somebody else? Completely not understood. And the third one, and that comes back, Nick, now to your question, the third one is what happens now if data comes into the modern industrial age. What is changing there? And I can tell you a lot, a lot. Today we have about 6 billion connected devices in the world. By 2030, remember Vision 2030, we're going to have 26 billion connected devices. It's going to be more data produced than mankind has ever done in the past. So the question is, what do we get out of it? You know, and this is actually the business model. Data are annoying because they take a lot of space, they cost a lot of money to store. But the question is, what do we get out of that data? How can we actually contribute to society, to industrial growth, and to a better world? That's what we are actually up to.
Quickly, underpinning a question to all of you, the technology and what a company like Siemens can do is develop the technology, develop the software, develop the ways of creating new systems, but humans have to still operate it. Do you see still an enormous gulf? You're talking about a paradigm shift.
Well, it is a massive paradigm shift. It's a massive paradigm shift, and paradigm shifts do change business models. And typically, if a business model gets changed, there are new contenders for that value chain you change. And I think that's the big uncertainty going forward, because there's going to be millions and millions and millions of jobs in the world going to be lost because of the change in the business models. But there are more millions of jobs being created. So the question is, how do we transfer society from the old way of industrialization to the fourth industrial revolution? And this is about training. You mentioned that we spend 600 million euros every year to train our people, you know, to do man-machine interface, to deal with technology, data analytics. In healthcare, for example, we made studies, and you need to know Siemens is the world leader in computer tomographs and in MRIs. So if you read an MRI from a human, we did studies, have this MRI read, the images read by doctors, and have those images read by a computer. And about 12% of the human reads are mistakenly interpreted. And there's only 0% of the computer doing misreads. What happens sometimes is that the computer doesn't understand and doesn't see it, but then the computer stops and says, hey, you know, I don't understand this image. Now think about 12% better is 12% less mistakes on human beings. Is 12% less mistakes on human health. So there is a massive benefit from technology and data if they are being done well, but they also will change the world in terms of the industrial age.
Right, let me go to the money industry, if we can, to Tidjane and Ajay. And Ajay, you describe yourself as a leading technology company in global payment industry. Even, I mean, MasterCard, people think money, but you're in the technology business, and Tidjane as well, with Credit Suisse. I mean, help us understand how much this is changing dramatically, the way you do everything that one assumes you're doing, but much is changing at the same time. Tidjane.
Nick, it's impossible to overstate the magnitude of what's going on. Just to give
you... Just say that again, can you?
Sorry?
Just say that again.
Yeah, it's impossible to overstate the magnitude of what's going on. If you take a bank like Credit Suisse, we do 50 million trades a day. So it's almost a data analyst's dream. The quantity of data we have to process is enormous. So the first aspect of data analytics is just processing all that information. We're doing that, and it's generating huge gains. 40 to 80% gains in efficiency, go 40 to 80% faster and cheaper. That's the first thing. The second, more interesting thing is really just providing services to our customers. We can invent new ways to serve them, give them more information about what they do. And the third thing is really the data mining, and that's the most scary part. We have a lab. I was there this week, and we have like 50 PhDs working together. And we have what you call a single client view, which is both internal and external. We basically, if you are a client, we know everything about you. Absolutely everything there is to know. Today, connecting various databases is spectacular, but the question that comes immediately is, what risks does that involve, and what responsibility comes with having all that data available, and what governance we need to put around it to make sure that it's used responsibly. As Ajay said, it's great to have a lot of data, but what for?
Do you think there's an urgency for that business of the legal framework that's put around it?
Absolutely.
And governments can't keep up, parliaments can't keep up on this.
It's an urgency, and if you look at what's happened in various elections around the world recently, you can see that there is a societal dimension to that, and that there's potentially a case for regulation.
Ajay Banga.
Well, you know, I believe that data is the new oil, and I'm saying it in this country because I believe that the prosperity that oil brought in the last 50 years, data will bring in the next 50, 100 years if we use it the right way. And unlike oil, it's not finite because it's generating each time you walk, because your mobile phone is generating the data. And I wish I could generate oil by walking around, but you can't, but you can generate data. And if you use that data well, so let me explain what I mean by that. You can use data well for commercial reasons, you can do it well for societal reasons, and you can do it and use it well for individual reasons. What you have to be careful about is keeping it safe and managing the ethics around how it's used. And that's what Tijam's point about maybe one day looking at regulation of how data is used. So let me give you a couple of examples of how you could use it in a social setting. We just worked with a company called Deep Macro to help understand after the Houston hurricane using not just payments data, but satellite imagery of the way industrial activity was progressing, including mobile phone movement, and you can figure out which part of an area is more impacted than the other. You can help direct first responders and aid and methodology of recovery to the right destination.
Why were you involved in that?
Because I believe that people like companies like ours, if all we do is view our data as an opportunity to do a commercial enterprise with it, I think we're leaving enormous opportunities on the table. I'm a believer that you can use data both for doing well and doing good at the same time.
So you're talking about reframing your purpose.
I consider data to be a public good that cannot not be used for purposes of the type that I'm describing. Now, I also use it for commercial good. I use it for everything from Boots trying to figure out where to relocate its pharmacies and how to redesign the pharmacies. I use it for McDonald's trying to figure out whether they should have all-day breakfast in their menu. You can do all of these things as well. You can help consumers do comparison shopping online, something that Mohammed knows a great deal about. Or you can also do things of the type that I'm describing. You can do things with tourism and the impact that you could generate by generating the right kind of crowd coming into your country. You can do a ton of things with data. The question is, do you have the right approach to keeping it safe? Do you have the right approach to its ethics? And do you have the right approach to exploiting it in bite-sized chunks?
Before I go to Mohammed and Tom and open it up a little further, let me just, for both of you representing financial companies in the way that you do, what kind of sense of exasperation and accountability do you now have? In other words, public, which expects perfection and doesn't understand screw-ups and doesn't want that, whether it's on its own account or whatever. In other words, the public now becoming very disillusioned if it doesn't get perfection through this data-driven world. Tijam.
It's a big responsibility which we take very seriously. To make it concrete, if you manage a payment system like Ajay does or we do, if somebody goes to see an oncologist, you'll know it. You know that somebody has been to a treatment center for cancer and he's paid the bill. Now, what do you do with that information? You really need to protect the privacy of a person. It's absolutely vital. That should not go anywhere. And you also need to forbid yourself to try and make money from that knowledge. So you really need to surround yourself with a lot of guarantees. And I'm sure we'll talk about cybersecurity, but in this world, it's not easy. Things move very fast and every day, and it's a big responsibility.
I mean, cybersecurity is another topic.
Yeah.
We'll come on to that in a moment.
Look at it. You come to it.
But on this business of the public, quickly.
Yes. So I would say one thing. I would reframe that question just a little bit, Nick. I think the public appreciates convenience over security. That's the bigger issue than perfection over something else. And if you think about that, even with data or with their devices or what they do, it's convenience over security. And the real challenge to me in this data-connected global platform world is that how do you then get to getting that reassurance of trust with them to operate? Because that to me is the bigger issue. I mean, Equifax is just the beginning of what could be the kind of things we will encounter with data in this coming age. So that's why the cybersecurity discussion is important. And that's why, to me, the power of data, the power of the internet, the ability to change our lives, to democratize productivity, to drive healthcare, we could lose all that if we don't pay attention to the safety and the ethics of using data.
Tom, I wasn't going to come to you at this stage, but as we've got those kind of examples, you were mentioning to me an extraordinary case of something you prevented from data. In other words, not the big Raytheon, the big corporate acting in a very corporate way, but something else which big data or data and the new information economy can do.
Well, we just talked about cybersecurity and really a subset of that.
And the one particular customer you had.
Information assurance and the use of big data in terms of how do you, number one, ensure that you have that as information assured. In other words, it's the correct data. No one has gotten in there and modified that data because you're making billion-dollar decisions on that data. The other element is using big data to actually enable cybersecurity. And so one of the big elements in the area of cybersecurity, groundbreaking area, is in the area of user entity behavioral analytics. And that is taking big data to monitor the network and understand if somebody has breached you, where they're at inside the system, what they're doing inside the system. And by monitoring that behavior of the network, you can help ensure cybersecurity of your network. We had one instance with one of our products, and one of our customers called us and said, "Thank you for saving the life of our employee." And so we were scratching our head a little bit on how did our cybersecurity software save this employee's life. Well, it turns out that they were using our cybersecurity software that essentially monitored the network to ensure cybersecurity. And this individual was on the network doing some things that were counter to cybersecurity. We sent security down to his office, and this person was ready to commit suicide. And so this data analytics, this predictive analytics, and this user behavior entity analytics is a way that has a lot of strength in many different areas. And we're just beginning to learn. I'm going to go back to this. We're really on an exponential curve, but we're on the linear part at the apex of it going up in terms of learning how to use this big data for things in all sorts of areas in business.
So you, from that one incident where you prevented a suicide, even you were learning something about the capability of what your data could do.
Yes, and we continue to learn. There's a whole area of predictive analytics. All businesses and people in their factories were using predictive analytics to monitor the machines in the factory, to monitor the robotics. I always ask the question, how come all of a sudden big data appeared on the scene? And the main area here is two areas. One is the cost of sensors has significantly gone down, and the other area is everything is interconnected. The Internet of Things has tied so many things together. It has provided an enormous amount of data, an enormous amount of capability. And so those two elements, plus the reduction in the cost of memory and the increase in speed, and I must say the reason we're at the apex of this explosion is we're bringing artificial intelligence on board, machine learning on board, which is really just going to take big data and take it to the next frontier.
Mohammed Alaba, I should just underscore that PIF here has 50% stake in Adeptio, which you created, one of your big investment funds, and also 500 million Saudi investment in Noon, which is also one of your big e-commerce platforms, which you've been developing. But you've written in the Gold Book, as I call it, for this conference, that technology is now a significant game changer. Tell us what your perspective is.
Well, let me first take you to ground floor of data. We've been talking about a lot of sophisticated stuff here, so let me take you to ground floor. And ground floor is a story that I told some of my colleagues before. A young guy in my family, 9 years old, I tell him, can you tell me the 3 most important things in your life that you cannot live without? He said, air, water, Wi-Fi. I said, what about your mom and dad? He said, I can connect with them on WhatsApp. I said, well, you will die of hunger. He said, no, Deliveroo. I will never die of hunger, right? So this is the beginning of the birth of data. But he is 9 years old. This panel, we're all close, approaching 60.
Should we get him up on FaceTime now and ask him to contribute?
No, I'm just saying, the truth is that we should be seriously looking at ourselves. We are young to learn what the science is all about. We have to learn it to provide it for the guy who's 9 years old, and he will be 17 in 5 years old. I hope our IQ and our ability is fit to be able to deal with this knowledge. So as a result of that, if you come to my office, I have an open floor office. I have about 20 desks. We're all next to each other. So now I have a young girl, 20 years old. Her name is Asha. She sits next to me. And her target is one thing. I told Asha, I want to improve my sale in Saudi Arabia specifically. And her first answer was, Uncle Muhammad, what data you give me? I said, sorry, what data you want from me? You go sort it out. So she came back 2 days. She said, okay, I got enough. 2 months, 300% up in sale. This is the science of data. But the truth is that, thank God, because of the businesses we're involved in, I can tell you which neighborhood in Cairo take more delivery of our pizza business than our Kentucky Fried Chicken business. I can tell you which neighborhood in Riyadh take delivery from our delivery system of iPhones compared to Samsungs. All this information is available. But the truth is that, what are we going to do about this data? And of course, we're going to use it for our businesses, for us to be smarter, for us to do better business. That's fine. But I totally agree with you. Who owns this data? 20 companies in the world, they own 80% of human data. Are we going to be able to use them for the well-being of our society as we also do business and grow 300%? And me, because I'm a person from the region, and many of you do business in the region, I think we have shareholders' responsibility to grow 300%, but I really believe that we have a social responsibility to our nation and our people, especially that in the Middle East, we need to really look after our society because they call us, developing countries and so forth. So we need all the help. So I think the social responsibility of using data and opening data to governments, to deploy better education, to deploy better healthcare, is something that's close to our hearts. And I think
so let's pick up on what Joe put on the agenda, was put on the agenda in the first session as well, about jobs and skills, and the 2/3 of people in the world today who don't even know the kind of job they're going to have in the future. Given the deficit of skill and opportunity in this region, and the 20-year-old you're talking about there, Mohammed, what are the implications of data and the ability of data to generate wealth, which is going to give at least many of those who are suffering or wondering about their futures a chance to feel they will have a small percentage of some of the wealth that's going around? Will they benefit from this data?
You're asking me? Of course.
How will they?
I know young people who are sitting in their home, in their little villages. They are manufacturing little items using Instagram to sell it to some lady in Seoul, Korea. Of course it will, but I think it's our duty that we should also provide all this education. We enrich people. We show them examples of how it can be done and how can they really grow and do well. So it's our duty as well.
Is all that monetizable?
I think it's very monetizable, especially when we have all of us, we have such rich data that if we were to share it with, let me give you an example. In our delivery business, which is huge in the Middle East, I can advise a woman in a neighborhood to say, please, in your kitchen, do not cook any Indian food in this neighborhood, because nobody takes delivery of Indian food in certain neighborhoods. So I can advise you how to minimize your menu, focus on your customer, because nobody will take delivery of or order Indian food in this neighborhood. So I think it's our responsibility that we share, that we create platform and we educate while we're making all the money for shareholders too.
Let's pick, Tidjane, did you want to go?
If I may, but I'm among the optimists. I really think that data and technology on balance empowers, especially in emerging markets. I mean, it's a funny anecdote, but I was, the second-hand clothes market is big in Africa because people cannot afford necessarily new goods. And I was told the story of this salesman in a little market in a small town. He's got WhatsApp Okay? He's got WhatsApp. It's the hardware and the software that empowers people. And every time, he's got his little Amazon going. Every time somebody needs a given pair of shoes, he's able to get it from Europe. And when it's here, he calls the customer on WhatsApp. Customer comes and gets it. And he loves WhatsApp because he's been doing so much more business. It's a small example, but if you think you have 8.5 billion devices today in the world, 7 billion people, so more than one per person, and we're going to 30 billion. So really, the diffusion of that technology all over the third world, or developing world, is huge, and there are many, many examples. You take the little cocoa farmers in West Africa, the fact that they can access Reuters on their phones and have the cocoa prices means that it's given them much more bargaining power in the little exchange at the end of a crop with a tradesman who came from the city and used to rip them off, quite frankly. So I think the applications are limitless, and if you demultiply that and look at the big numbers, the mass of people who are impacted positively by that, I think the benefits outweigh the downsides. Not to deny the downsides and the risks, but the benefits are enormous.
We've got 20 minutes to run, and Joe and Tom have already put on the issue of security, cybersecurity, however we want to describe it, about what the dangers are or the vulnerabilities are on security terms. Is there a danger of overstating this or understating it, Tom?
I would say, I think right now, I believe it's understated. I believe folks really don't understand the cybersecurity implications of the data, and ensuring that data is information assured and securing it. And so, for example, what are you doing with your data? Do you encrypt it when it's at rest? When that data moves, what are you doing with the data there? Are you ensuring that that data is not being corrupted as it moves from one place to the next? Where are you storing all your data? Are you putting it in one place, or are you putting it in multiple places with duplicates? And the bottom line is if you're making multi-billion-dollar decisions on this data, you better make sure that data is correct. And the only way to make sure it's correct is to cyber secure that data.
And Lubna, you were nodding agreement there as well. On security.
Yes.
Security.
Security is a big concern because of the privacy involved for people in the data. For our part of the world here, we're used to having the data, I'm going to take it to a little bit further. I think our part of the world will frog leap in terms of advancement of data because our laws on privacy are less restrictive than in the developed world and all of this. Citizens here accept the fact that their phones are monitored and being this because to take care of our security reasons. So that is going to allow us here to leapfrog in that area. But security definitely is a concern for us as well.
Joe Kaeser, from Tom there, it's understated, it's not yet fully understood at the scale it needs to be understood, and the speed as well, security.
I believe it is not understood, and it cannot be understood because we are only in the beginning of everything. And I want to come back talking about data security. I want to come back actually to the integrity of data. So it's not so much keeping the data secure, but also be sure that the data are right. Just think about some information from any one of us here in this room is going to be put into the internet with a wrong statement, a lie, disintegrity. So within seconds or minutes, that information about us can be spread all over the world. Millions and millions of people can post it to anyone. So, and the information is wrong, right? It's a discredit. So even if after 3 or 4 days, we have to take legal actions to remove that thing from the internet, do you really think anyone cares anymore about that removal? It is out already. It has created reputational impact. So we need to be very clear about how do we make sure that we have integrity of data. It's a very big responsibility, especially for those who are spreading the data, like Facebook and the like. Big responsibility. And the second topic, and this I come back to that time and again, oil, gas, water, those are natural resources. They are tangible things. Data is an artificial resource. It comes from someplace and is not a purpose on its own. So what we need to do to make this world a better planet and this society a better society is actually that we derive data from the source, from devices, from natural resources, analyze them, feed them back into that natural process, and then make a better world. Because data can heal cancer. Data can help us to defeat cancer. And that's got to be the thing what we need to expect from data. Have a purpose to society. And not talk so much about, what do we do with data and big business model. What is the purpose of data for a better society? We always need to ask ourselves that one, and we need to protect them. And of course, cybersecurity. I mean, look, even in military environments, in the old physical world, there were soldiers, there were tanks, and things like that. Just think about it, 20, 40, or 50, someplace. This could be a data war, because data can be corrupted. Think about a pharmaceutical industry. Think about a pharmaceutical plant anywhere in the world. Yeah? Highly automated.